So, hello everyone, and welcome back to our talk with Yemisi Mokuolu. She's already in, I saw her. Yeah. I just want to say some words, and then Yemisi, you can start. Okay, so Yemisi Mokuolu is an accomplished and highly regarded creative and cultural industries consultant and independent producer. She is best known for her work supporting the growth and development of the creative and culture industries across Africa and raising the value of African creative content globally. She's the founder and COE of Hedge Ideas Worldwide. So I think in the next hour and tomorrow in the workshop you will know her a bit better. Since 2002, as Hedge events with a focus on raising the profile of African arts and artists. And in 2006, she built business support and professional development into the company's mind to better support sustainability for African creative participators, business, and organizations around the world. And she lead production and delivery of programs and initiatives across Africa and Europe on behalf of world's leading development agencies like Amnesty International, Arts Council England, British Council, the Institut Français, the King's College London, and also for the Goethe Institute. And today, Hedge Ideas remind us to support amazing people, as she wrote for me. So people around the world realize the amazing ideas for social impact and culture change. She also staged some London's largest African arts festival, which is titled Out of Africa, and she also produced the Amnesty International at the Edinburgh Festival. She's also the co-founder of 5 Kowi's Art Education Initiative in Nigeria, and also co-producer of the Asbako One Dance Festival in Ghana. For now, I would stop this list because there would be much more about to say her. She has a big network and is associated to many other companies. She's awarded in the African Ambassadors and Diaspora Interactive Forum. And there are lots of other networks. You can find her by LinkedIn website. She has an Instagram account and a YouTube channel, but I think she will guide you to her websites. Today we invite her for the keynote Culture Management in the Age of Digital. I'm very happy to have you here, Yemisi. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. What an incredible introduction. I'm really pleased to meet all of you guys in the digital age. I thought it was apt to do a keynote on that because I missed out on a wonderful trip to Germany, and I'm having to present this keynote to you digitally, which I feel is a first and probably won't be the last. And that's why I thought it would be great to talk to you guys about how do we manage culture in this digital age that is upon us. We've already had an introduction about myself, but I just wanted to wish you guys all well and good luck as you embark on your MA. And I really do feel so honored to be delivering this keynote to you. So, managing culture in the digital age. I mean, as we entered lockdown, we were just about to embark on hosting, I think, one of the biggest forums that we devised. It was, I would say, 10 years in the making. We had managed to get the support of the Mayor of London, It was going to be hosted at City Hall, which is an incredibly prestigious building in the centre of London, which is the home of the Mayor of London. We're bringing together cultural managers, creatives, cultural entrepreneurs, artists, musicians, fashion designers from all over London who had an incredibly strong vision for Africa in London, because this was a very under-supported group of people, a really neglected part of our cultural makeup in London. And this was going to be a momentous occasion to have this forum and bring these people together in order for us to define and determine what vision we could have for Africa in London. And then lockdown happened. And like overnight, the cultural industries seems to, I don't know, you know, theatres close, productions ended, gigs were cancelled, and we were like, you know what, let's have a meeting, let's come together. We're locked in our houses, but let's come together, let's see if we can hold this forum. And so teams appeared from nowhere. And we were, I think I got an app, that was it. I was given a link, got the app, downloaded the app, registered, finally registered. And really sort of bewildered eyes and sad eyes, and but you know, there were some thoughtful eyes there, and concerned eyes, and hopeful eyes. And we decided that we were going to host our forum online. The initiative we had was important, it was vital, and we were going to use every digital tool at our disposal in order to make this thing happen. We were going to host a Facebook Live extravaganza, and we were going to have an interactive Zoom session so that we were able to support all these cultural players in our joint vision. It was bewildering, it was desperate, but we scrabbled together to make this thing happen and to manage culture in the digital age. Prior to lockdown, I'd actually spent most of my time resisting culture in the digital age. To me, it was like managing culture in the digital age. It sounded like an oxymoron. I mean, digital just seemed so devoid of culture. How could it be a tool for culture? I'm actually quite old, so I'm analog. So digital for me, it was like, how do you do this? And so before COVID, I remember we were trying to put together a music residency as part of a festival that we host in Ghana called Asabako. And so we had decided to use digital because all of the culture producers and the managers, we were all based in different parts of the world. So we had coordinators in Berlin, in Germany, in Accra and Takoradi in Ghana, in London and Epsom in the UK, and in Freetown in Sierra Leone. So we decided that we would use digital. But it was so frustrating. I mean, you didn't know where a document was going to come from. Was it going to be on Dropbox or Google Drive? Where was the message coming from? Was it Facebook Messenger or Instagram, email or WhatsApp? You know, you'd have people again, I don't use Facebook Messenger. Instagram's better. Why do we have to have so many WhatsApp groups? So digital was a real barrier. We had no common understanding or formal language of how to create and co-create together using digital. Yeah, digital was a real barrier. And eventually I actually ended up having to travel to each city and have face-to-face meetings with the different producers and cultural managers and artists so that we were able to establish some form of common ground and some ground rules and really understand what it is we're producing. Basically, the collective resistance to and mistrust of digital was really clear amongst us as creators, and managing culture through digital was not even a consideration. And then a month later, when lockdown happened, we were essentially thrust together and made to use digital, made to create and communicate through digital means. We produce this arts education program in Nigeria that was mentioned before, called 5 Calories. And 5 Calories was set up to support teachers to be able to use creativity in the classroom so that they can make learning more engaging, inclusive, accessible, and fun. So when lockdown happened and the schools closed, my thoughts immediately went to the fact that 90% of children across Nigeria don't have any access to digital. So how are we going to engage with them when governments were calling on schools to deliver their programs online? Everybody was, like I said, scrabbling for digital solutions in order to continue and to deliver. But how are we going to engage with our key group of beneficiaries who have no access to digital? How are we going to support them? We had to use digital. We had to use digital to come up with solutions. And as cultural managers, we had to embrace digital. So quickly, we set our common goals. We decided upon the tools that we were going to use. We quickly learned from the past resistance to digital how we could embrace digital in order to be cultural managers using digital tools. We were in our respective living rooms and sitting rooms and kitchens using WhatsApp, Zoom, email to co-create and to interact and to develop and to devise solutions. And we use social media in order to lobby government for them to understand that the fact that there were so few people that had access to digital. And I'm really, really happy to say that we were able to create these home learning kits, which were physically printed. And through using digital tools, we were able to curate. But however, we came up with physical home learning kits that were distributed across Nigeria in a very physical way to support the children. And the teachers were engaged through digital platforms to be able to capacity build them, because we were in our homes and we weren't able to interact with each other. We then knew that we were actually now cultural managers, actually doing cultural management in the digital age. When COVID hit and lockdown came upon us, it wasn't just us, it was the whole sector immediately had to find digital solutions, and the scramble for digital was upon us. It had begun. We had online music gigs, theatre productions were finding old performances and putting them on YouTube. Theatre production companies were doing rehearsals online, doing devised work online. Audiences were accessing books online. TikTok took flight and people started to create their own creative content. Art galleries and museums were opening up their digital collections and offering it to people. We had cultural managers having talks, seminars, co-creating, hacks, devising, using Zoom, WebEx, Teams, Skype, in order to be able to communicate. WhatsApp had actually become a business tool. We were producing projects and we had never had, in a way which we had never done before, trying to understand the role and function of digital as it affected us, and also as it affected others and as it affected the sector. Prior to COVID, lockdown and social distancing, for many cultural managers, digital was a function associated to management and administration. But today, digital has become more integral to our practice and fundamental to how we create and realize our goals and visions as cultural managers. Developing digital innovations for the cultural sector has now become a priority. COVID, lockdown, social distancing has forced the cultural sector into the digital age. Now we are here, now we are in the digital age. Artists, audiences, cultural centres, organisations are realising in order to maintain the arts, especially through this crisis, we are having to engage with digital. COVID, lockdown, social distancing has forced us to break that barrier that stops us from connecting with digital. It has kind of forced us into being the digital age. So what is the role of the cultural manager in the age of digital? For me, it's what it's always been, to guide, to make sense of, to advocate, to support people through change and through transitions. Our role is to find that beautiful blend between the physical and the digital world. What we know and what we don't know, how things were and how things can and will be, creating access, finding common understanding, creating new business models, new means of production, new creative outputs and outcomes, new ways of engaging with the arts, developing capacity to use, create and produce with digital tools. Our role is to find that sweet spot, that balance. As cultural managers, I think that our role in this digital age is to allow culture to thrive in the digital age. So I thank you so much for inviting me to deliver this keynote. And I really look forward to engaging with you as cultural managers in this new digital age. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Yemisi.
You're very welcome.
So please, if you have questions, raise your hand or write it in the chat, because we cannot see all of you at the same time. And you can ask your question in the chat. Yemisi, you see the chat as well, I think.
Oh yeah, I can chat.
You can chat in the chat. No, if there are any questions, please, you can also say, I have a question, and raise your, put your camera on and talk directly to Yemisi. That would be more interaction, I think.
Hi.
Hello.
I wanted to ask, you talked about the digital being barrier in the beginning, but now do you see like particular advantages in relation to the physical world like we know it, or can you maybe, I don't know, explain your experience with it?
Yeah, no, I'm really happy you asked that question, because with everything, there can be change that can be positive, yes? And so I'll give an example with the home learning kits that we had to develop for the children in Nigeria. Interestingly enough, because of digital, we were able to reach more people, meaning more governments and more decision makers. If we had had to go around doing meetings and scheduling, it could have taken months. But because of the speed of digital and the reach of digital, so we were able to talk to people in Lagos at the same time as talking to people in Munich, instead of flying from Munich to Lagos. And so that was one advantage. That meant that we were able to do things quicker and make decisions and get things signed off in a more speedy way. In terms of what we were able to design, I actually feel that the design process was limited in the beginning, but once we decided to have a proper framework of how we were going to work together and really create a clear process, it started to become much, much more efficient, much more efficient. Yes, okay, we do need to be next to each other when we're making changes to the design of the individual worksheets. We're feeling that pain. But however, the process was more efficient by integrating digital. So we're not 100% talking about digital, but it's about knowing when to use digital, how to use digital, and why we're integrating digital into our practice as cultural managers. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, and the next question was from Ekaterina. In the chat, she asked, what about safety in internet?
Again, great question. So we quickly went and did child protection courses, and I was fortunate enough that a friend of mine works quite up in government and has just created a 5-point lobbying action plan to make internet safe for children. So we were able to educate ourselves about that. And then, unfortunately, a friend had a really horrible incident. This current period, Black Lives Matter, has become one of the best examples I can think of how cultural management has used digital. And she was doing a talk, and unfortunately, some outright people decided to sabotage the Zoom call and said some horrific things and presented some incredibly disturbing imagery on the Zoom. But we learned from that very quickly because she shared her experience with us. And so we were able to utilize some of the safety protocols that you have on Zoom, like the passwords and also the waiting room. But yes, with safety, we are being very diligent and taking things step by step, learning and educating ourselves to make sure that we can create safe environments, but also really respectful practices, but for ourselves and also our audiences, so that they can be able to have a cultural experience that is inclusive and enjoyable and engaging and safe.
Ekaterina says thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I had is there an order? I'll just say my question.
No, to now, you are the next now, so just speak, please.
Thanks so much for the talk. The point that you rose about the fact that there'd been for quite a long time a resistance in the cultural sector towards digitalization, which then suddenly, and I observed that as well, it was quite interesting how it sort of very quickly evaporated when it became that actually this is a thing that we're going to be forced to actually now look at and work with because of the situation, the global situation that we find ourselves in. But do you think that you could identify any, I mean, you went into it a little bit with some resistance maybe about the fact that sometimes it can be not very clear if you're using digital methods in order to communicate, but were there any other kind of major themes within this resistance from the cultural sector about using digital? Anything that maybe was kind of a bit more politically slanted, maybe the fact that digital means that more people can participate, there's actually a resistance towards that because there's a kind of elitism still in it, that people don't necessarily want culture for everyone or don't want these diverse voices coming in or want to kind of control it still in a certain way?
I think I totally hear what you're saying. My experience was that the barrier to digital is the undefined of culture. But there's a collective protectionism about what people believe culture kind of means. And there's a sense that we have to do it in this way all the time, and we can't do it differently. That was what I was getting from people. They weren't able to articulate it, but by not embracing the new process, you could tell that there was resistance, you know, by sort of, oh, I don't want to use WhatsApp, or I'm not going to have a Zoom meeting, or do I have to have Skype? Oh, please can we meet? Or it's better if we have this conference together. Or we don't need to invest in digital solutions for culture because we do it this way. So that was what I was getting. So there wasn't any kind of clear articulation. Where it was coming from, I think it's many places. You hit on them. Absolutely, protectionism is one of them. But I think that's limited to a very small minority. And that's why I think that when we had to use digital, everyone was with it, because actually the silent majority were quite happy to use digital, quite happy to engage with new processes. That means that we can maintain culture, advance culture, make culture more inclusive. And I think that's why it's been taken up so readily. But no, I don't have any real deep analysis about the resistance. It's just that you knew it was there, and the blocks and the invisible barriers, the limitations, the way people limited the way they wanted to interact with digital. And I think that definitely came from a very small few of the gatekeepers. But audience as well, there's that sense of, now we're thinking, how is it that we hadn't digitized, commercialized how we interact with digital? We've missed out. You know, I've been calling for museums and galleries to digitize their collections since I did my dissertation in 1998. I did it on cyber art because I thought this was the place where we could have equal access to art. And I remember my professor being very annoyed with me. Like, what kind of a ridiculous notion is that? And now we're sort of thinking, oh wow, if only we had invested in a digital strategy, then we might have been able to come out of this COVID a bit smoother. So yeah, I can't answer your question too straight. It makes me think about too many things. But like I said, yeah, there was definitely resistance, and I think the resistance came from very few people, and I think now it's shattered.
Okay, so thank you. We have now a lot of questions, Yemisi, to work through, and we have a hands up from Serene. So, but I first would like to start with the question, could you talk a bit about your journey as a culture manager and the paths that lead you where you are today? But this could be a long story. Maybe you can.
I'll make it short.
Try it, please.
I will try. Thank you. Are you sitting comfortably? Now I will begin. So when I was doing my A-levels, one of the things that I found difficult was the fact that myself and my family included weren't really represented in the, I guess, the history of art or the cultural canon that was in the mainstream. And I knew I had a very, very rich cultural heritage. My family always educated me about the history of my family and the culture that I come from, being Yoruba from Nigeria. And I found it bewildering, actually, that I knew so much about European culture and art, but it wasn't the same reception about people understanding about African culture and art. So when I graduated, so when I was 18, I decided to go to university to study history of art and to question how could they call it the history of art when it was only talking about European history? I was like, but you know, there's like other parts of the world. And it was a very rude UCAS application. I said, who the hell do you think you are calling this the history of art? And of course they accepted me. And so I did university. And then when I graduated and went into the real world, I realized that the way African art was being presented was tragically two-dimensional. I mean, insultingly so. It was so lazy, and it also, the impact it had on how people perceived people of African heritage, because of the imagery and the cultural way in which Africa and African culture is being presented in a really limited and primitive way, meant that when I went into the room, people thought that I was limited and primitive. So I decided that this was before cultural manager as a term was even in my mind, or I didn't even know if it even existed. So I decided to use culture and manage culture in a way to transform people's understanding and enrich their understanding of what African arts and culture was and is. And so the first thing I did was a club night. So I thought, what's the best way to bring people together in a cultural celebration? And so that's how my career began. I phoned up a venue. I booked some DJs. I made some flyers. My mom even helped to distribute them on the bus and on the train. And we got listings in Time Out. This is before digital. This was all printed press. And I learned on the move. I learned how to do PR and managed to gather amazing people around me. And then 2 years later, someone approached me and said, you can teach other people what you're learning for yourself, because I'm quite good at creating processes for other people. And that's how Hatch was born. And so, yeah, so my career simply came out of seeing a problem, being a classic cultural entrepreneur, and coming up with a solution in order to deal with it. And now I've dedicated my career to supporting others to be able to overcome their challenges and to realize their cultural change projects as well. I hope that was short enough.
For now, it should be enough.
Thank you.
But yeah, unfortunately, the time's running.
It's okay.
So there was a hands up from Serene. Please go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. First of all, thank you for your speech. I think I really agree in terms of the way you have to adjust as a cultural manager in the digital age. I myself personally have had a lot of experiments and also learned a lot of really amazing possibilities that you can do, especially I found out that I could create this platform and unite the region without flying anywhere. So it was really nice. So I think we are all trying to adapt in terms of like management and producing. We can connect and communicate beyond borders. And also, I also kind of experimented with artistic research, where the artist is in another country and we have to kind of like be the local assistant in terms of their research. And it was kind of interesting. But I think me coming from like a performing arts perspective, I think the one thing that's really, we're still very much struggling with is the implementation of that certain art and culture, which really requires to be in the same space. And it ties in with the very definition of that art and culture. So I was just wondering if you have any experience to share with us about how you try to, you know, hybrid the online and physical experience, but in terms of like the implementation of the project, which is a more kind of like the artistic project, if you have any?
No, I think I understand what you mean. So I hope my presentation doesn't lead you guys to think that I'm advocating for 100% digital. It's about us recognizing as culture managers that we are in the digital age and that we have to understand our processes and means of productions within this digital context. And I'm a live events producer. I'm a festival producer. I produce a festival. I literally thrive off of interaction. And so for me, we are driving constantly towards maintaining and knowing that digital has a place, but it's not to, my goodness, I hope, replace physical. So in response to your question, as part of the Arts Education Project, we're actually doing an installation in Lagos, and we might even be doing it in London and New York as well. And we've engaged with so before lockdown, we had managed to raise some money to get an artist in residence. They haven't prescribed what kind of artist, but just an artist in residence. So then lockdown happened and the grants organizers said we could continue. So we had to think, which medium could we use that's going to work digitally? And so we decided on storytelling and poetry. But we have a shift because we have in Lagos, people are out and about, but here in London, we're still kind of in lockdown. So we're producing our work, we're not even able to go outside. So we're working with people through digital means, but we're also creating physical projects. So during the lockdown period, we were able to do a huge painted installation in the streets to do signs for people and to beautify the area. And we had artists doing that. We had performance artists performing under the bridges and recording that and actually presenting that to people through their devices at home to keep people engaged with what we were doing on our messaging. The children, the home learning kits we've designed for them, they actually create pieces of artwork. And so they're creating these artwork pieces and they're able to share them with each other by taking photos. Either the teacher takes a photo of the parent and they can share it, and we share it on social media. So we're always working together with digital and the physical, overcoming the problems when the government say, this city is now on lockdown, because that's what happened in Nigeria. The whole country wasn't on lockdown. You had cities and areas on lockdown. So some people could move, others couldn't. So we really had to balance it out. So with this poet in America, who's in lockdown in California, devising poetry, creating YouTube videos, which we're presenting to our teachers who are across Nigeria, where they're learning how to do poetry art workshop for their children who are not even anywhere near them anymore because the schools are closed, having to engage with them through Instagram Live to teach them how to do the workshops, and then the end product is then given to a print company who can then display this outside, and we're talking to performance artists who are then presenting these artworks in a public space for people who are either passing by or accessing the content digitally. So for me, it's a seamless thing. It's not an either or, it's another tool that as cultural managers we are using, and I think that we need to use so that we can make sure that the cultural sector can really thrive in this time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Marco, I saw you question in the chat, but I would prefer the question from Nurulwide because it get in the same direction. Nurulwide is from Abuja in Nigeria, and he says, or maybe you can read it, but thank you for your quick notes. Back home in Nigeria, we are still struggling to establish structural culture policies, trying to educate culture workers on our role in a society where art is almost becoming objective, and the need to deconstruct and decentralizing culture consumption, and now we are taking digital culture consumption. Do you think we are really prepared for it? And do you see any disadvantages for Africans considering for intrinsic attributes to culture?
Yes, I actually did a talk because the thing that comes to mind is, well, two things come to mind. One, it's the kind of like commercializing of digital content. And I think that's something that's happening that everyone's got in mind. And the fact that there aren't any policies and licensing. Facebook is having a bit of a problem right now because you've got musicians who are going online singing other people's songs. You know, so there's real IP issues. So it's not just the continent. So I think actually Africa's got the edge because we're so under-regulated. And so, and actually the lockdown experience is far more severe in Europe than it is across the continent. What we're dealing with in Africa is not so much about digital, but it's other factors. So access to food and electricity and data and connectivity. And that, I think, is a different topic. But in terms of cultural management, the way out and the way we've been able to survive as cultural managers in an African context is to be solutions for everybody else. So we are a solution for education in the context of the arts education program in Nigeria. We're not presenting art, we are presenting a solution for how do you support children to maintain their education and stay engaged during lockdown. Immediately establishing that, we have had zero resistance, and we have had the Nigerian government, UNICEF, German government, and corporates coming on board. Equally, we used our artists to be able to be a means of communication to communicate about COVID. So we were able to come up with a solution for how do we get people to understand what they need to do during this crisis, yeah? We've been able to pay and employ artists to be able to produce content which is delivered, like I said, outside painted murals, you know, but also digital content. We have got actors right now who are storytelling so that people can understand in their own language, and really bringing life and color to the messaging as well. And we've been able to actively fundraise for that. So I think that in answer to your question, it's more about positioning culture as a solution for local problems and local issues. That, for me, has been a way to bypass a lot of the policy issues, because people kind of sense of develop the policies around you because you're enabling them and you're enabling the things that they want to see happen. Your question was big and difficult for me to answer, but I hope that I've at least unlocked some of your thoughts for you.
So thank you, Yemisi. We have only just 2 minutes, but Yemisi, if you like, we can do it a bit longer. Then the break for the others is not an hour, but 45 minutes. But there are still some questions. I don't know, Yemisi, are you willing to stay a bit longer and answer the question?
If people are happy to stay, I'm happy to answer.
Okay, so then I would go, I just will tell all of you what next is then Macron, and I would do this together with a question of Mathilde. And then there was a hands up from Lola. I don't know if she still have her hands up because I can't see this. And then there was a question from Alex and a question from Nada. So
okay,
they are just
okay, I'll be quicker with my answers. Sorry.
Okay, so one question from Macron and Mathilde, I would bring them together because the one was, do you see yourself using the best practice post-COVID? And the other one was, do you think there's some darker side of the digital that we as managers should be aware for before using it to interact with an audience? Those, yeah.
Yes, I purposefully didn't put it into my presentation because I'm not an expert, but I really believe that the Association for Cultural Managers needs to do this work. We have just seen Trump ban TikTok, and that is basically a kind of Cold War. And, you know, there is some really horrible things that are taking place, and digital is being manipulated, weaponized. We have to be aware of this so that we don't get dragged into proxy wars or, you know, sort of senseless things like that. But I really believe that this is the kind of work that needs to happen, and also workshops and training needs to happen to support us as cultural managers to be really aware of the digital impact in the environment and all the factors that I can't even conceive of and I'm not aware of. And I know that, like I said, there's people out there who are working really hard to lobby government in terms of data usage, you know, exploitation of people's details. I mean, things that like I said, things I can't even imagine. But the answer is like, yes. And I think that this is something that should be done collectively. We should be capacity built to be able to use in the best ways in which to use digital as cultural managers.
Okay, and then there was the hands up from Lola.
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much for this talk. And thank you to Makuma for booking you. We touched a bit on accessibility and inclusion, and I'm just wondering, in your experience, you know, clearly we still have massive issues of representation in the cultural industry. Even with digitalization, we've seen that some forms of digitalizations are still harming certain communities and identities over others. So I'm just wondering generally, what are some ways in which you recommend we examine our practices and check our practices on our path as cultural managers to avoid replicating pro-Western narratives and general structures of oppression that erase certain identities and realities?
I mean, you just answered the question. Just wake up every day and say that what you've just said, you know, because for me, it's about intention. I think you have to be inclusive. You have to be inclusiveness. You have to be accessibility. The thing I do is I make sure I wrap myself around with as broad and diverse a range of people as possible. I'm just interested, just curious. You know, I love to create in collaboration. So if I come up with something, it's like, oh, what do you think of this? And, you know, and if you are surrounded by people that have totally different, I wouldn't say mindsets, but experiences, they'll be able to say, oh, actually, do you know, Yemisi, I love the fact you're doing an e-learning platform, but you do know that a whole bunch of people won't be able to access it because they won't be able to afford the data. Oh my God, I didn't know that. Okay, then maybe we can come up with a solution which is isn't so data intensive. And then, oh, maybe there might be someone who might be able to pay for it, yeah? So the e-learning platform that we're creating, we're now able to get MTN Foundation in Nigeria, who actually have websites that they tag which they don't charge them for. So we're now going for a accreditation, I think, so that our e-learning platform, people can access it anywhere in the world without having to pay the downloading charges, yeah? And then we're very clear that there's people that don't even have mobile phones or computers. So we're working with UNICEF and schools and safe spaces to be able to equip them with computers and laptops and mobile phones and things like that. So I think we wouldn't have gotten to that place if it wasn't for the fact that we live, breathe and eat inclusiveness. We're always talking, we're always engaging. I know there's a lot of workshops out there that people can do, but I think the way we're cultural managers, so when I want to get to know people, I eat their food. I like to listen to their stories. So for me, it's a very difficult question to ask because I think that's just how we should be. We should always be willing to enter into another person's kind of imagination and space and respectfully think about how that can help us to grow as cultural managers and how to help us create. So yeah, so you could do a workshop, but I think the intention is setting the intention of being inclusive and open. I think that's the real work. So do what that question you asked, say it to yourself every morning. And I think that should be, I think you'd have done the job.
Okay, so then there was a question from Alex, which was, what is your take on going digital and offerings at no cost, or even the expectations that what is online should be free? So it goes nearly in the direction you just mentioned, but are there ideas on how to continue to make or raise money or being able to cover the costs for projects being offered online?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm an anarchist anyway, so I'm like, it should all be free. So I think we should all be lobbying. I don't understand how this is like not free. So why don't we all just agree that we're going to lobby and get to a place whereby it would be ridiculous to not give people access to information. And that would be a crime in itself. So I'm like, it should all be free, to be quite honest. Libraries are free, I think they are. So I think, yeah, I think it should all be free.
Okay, so then maybe Hannes' remark, he said, you just spoke about the communalization of culture. Do you think it's necessary to establish alternative platforms in the digital world next to the big player who communalize the art? So maybe it goes nearly cleared or nearly next to what you just say.
Yeah, I think we have to. I think we're all at different stages, and I think we just need to get on board with the fact that we are in this digital age, and decide how we want to engage with it. So the e-learning platform that we've created, and even the festival, we've made a decision that we're not going to do the festival online like how a lot of people are doing. Yeah, we're going to maintain a physical experience. Okay, so that's part of us creating another platform. We're going to have digital interfacing, but the platform that we've created is 80% physical and 20% digital. So not all digital platforms have to be, digital. Digital, we need to start to think of it in a much more fluid way. But in terms of competing with like Facebook and things like that, I don't know. I think we have to use these plugins so that, because they've done the hard work for us, but I think if we are clear on some of those privacy protocols, if they are not going to work for us, we need to communicate with Facebook and tell Facebook, look, this is what we're trying to do. Your privacy settings do not work for us. And really keep pushing and challenging them to change and adapt as well as being able to find other platforms that are going to support what we're trying to do and the vision that we have much closely, especially now we're getting into a fight for resources, and there's a lot of political there's so much, we could go, there's so many political things that are going on right now that I don't even know where to begin. I mean, like, I'll go back to TikTok. So we do have to take some measure of control over the platforms that we use, how we use them, and if they're not really working for us, we need to be able to communicate with the people and or try to devise our own platforms, be they online or offline.
It also goes very next to a question Nada asked. What about the profit out of digital transformation? When a profit can, maybe you would,
So I do business development because very quickly I realized that in order for artists and cultural organizations to be sustainable, they needed to understand the business of what they do, which is where the money comes from. And so we need to come together and share our experiences of what's going well and what's not going well, so that we can start to create new models, new business models, and also be able to devise new financing models. Right now, we're doing a piece of research on financing for the creative and cultural industries across Africa. And the research has been incredible because the financial institutions, there is an opportunity for them to be very creative, but the creative businesses also have to be creative too. So we need to create new business models. We need to always have in the front of our minds when we're engaging with digital that actually there is a monetization here as well. We can't just look at digital as a place for communication and maybe, I don't know, a little bit of design work. It is an integrated aspect of what we're doing. And so when we think about the whole project design plan, from marketing to research design to the financial sections of your whole production, how does digital fit in, and what question, and how is that supporting the work that we're doing? So so monetizing digital content is one of the biggest things. I think it's the #1 priority actually that we need to all collectively come together and start to come up with solutions for.
Okay, then there was a lot of thank yous and thanks. And if I didn't miss a hands up, I have a last comment from Adalet. I think you know him. He says, "Hello Yemisi, lovely to see you on this platform with such a good energy. While you are based in London, how's arts and culture industry response to the COVID-19? So that I thought this may be a good question to final again, or how COVID-19 is influenced the English.
No, I understand. It's a very loaded question because I'm a Black creative producer, so it's incredibly loaded. We've always been marginalized and excluded. And so COVID coming along meant that there was no support, and most of the financial support went straight to the more established organizations, where you will see very, very few, if any, will be supporting Black-led arts initiatives. For the creative and cultural industries as a whole, it's been very reactionary because there was no preparedness for how do we deal with a problem. There's been that sense of we're okay, nothing can touch us, we can continue. And then this happens, and we have seen, some of the biggest cultural institutions just disappear overnight. And I think that the irresponsibility of the cultural elite has shown itself. And like I said, it's a loaded question. I can't answer it with kindness, because I just think that very irresponsible leadership. We've been very grateful that the Arts Council have been able to divert some of their grants, but it's not like as if it's reaching the producers, the makers, the musicians. Cinemas are getting support because they can get it through the government, through business loans. But I think, and it speaks to one of the questions that was asked earlier, now that the gatekeepers are kind of on the back foot, the majority of people who genuinely care about culture and the arts are now coming forth with the most spectacular innovations that are serving us all. And they're sharing their struggle and they're sharing their ideas. And even on the news yesterday, I saw this fantastic theatre group, and they had come up with a way in which they could produce theatre performances using Zoom, and they happily shared with everybody, audiences as well, how this could happen. So I guess we started off selfishly, but now the culture and the creative industries is far more open, inclusive, and daring to be the safe space that it can be. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much for this inspiring talk, Yemisi.
You're welcome.
And well, some of you will get to know her tomorrow in the workshop.
Yeah.
And for the other, we will change now for the cohort of 2019. We will change the room and we start at 5 at German time. And the other cohort, you can stay here. And we will go also the next step at 5. So in 45 minutes, we will see us. Thank you again, Yemisi. That was very nice, a very good, nice talk. And there are lots of thank you in the chat. I think you see it by yourself. That was very inspiring.
So
thank you very much.
I really know it was an honor to be, and you can always find me on the socials, finding Yemisi. So, and yeah, really, it was an honor. Thank you so much for inviting me to
Thank you,
this
Yemisi.
keynote. I really enjoyed it. Thank you. Good luck, everybody.
You can find Yemisi also if you Google Hedge Africa, London, and yeah.
Just type my name in Google, you'll be fine.
Yes, yes.
Cool. Thank
okay,
you so
there's
much.
also one who found you, so yes, they all Googled you. So
I think my name is spelled correctly. I did it myself, so it's cool.
Yeah, it's fine.
So do I just disappear now, like through the magic of internet?
Yes, you can.
Bye, everybody. Thank you
Bye.
so much.
Thank you, Yemisi.
Bye. Good luck.
Bye. Thank you.
brief intro for or info for those living in the East, as it is getting rather late with you guys. We will have the very same session we're having today, tomorrow in the morning.